Hello, everybody. This is our Astro energy forecast for the upcoming week. My name is Camille Craft. I'm the owner and creator of Vital Mystic and our brand new podcast and platform, Dear Miss Craft. If you haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet, please go ahead and head over there. We have lots of amazing teachings on there. I was actually just listening back this morning about different timing and how to use your chart and so forth. So, for the sake of this live, we're going to be talking about this week's astrology, and we actually have some really good stuff happening. We had that the 7-part Aries stellium last week. That was a lot. And, across the board, whether you're aware of it or not, on every level, we're all moving through some form of identity rebirth. And we're initiating something that's new on a collective level, internally, externally, and maybe some things. A lot of times I was just talking to somebody last night and they're like, oh man, this week's really just not my week. Everything is like falling apart or like things are coming from the past. And I'm like, yeah, it's because where we're going, you don't want to still be you don't want any loose ends, right? You don't want any loose ends from the past or stories from the past or things that happened from the past. We want to make sure that we're closing all those doors because what is coming for you in the coming weeks and months is really like a new story. It's a new chapter in your life. So this week, as we culminate with that energy and we integrate that energy, we have a waxing moon. Waxing moons are incredibly powerful for manifestation. They're really powerful to do more rituals that are going to bring things to you or open doors. I'm hearing very clearly like this, and I said this about the stellium too, but there might be a pivotal decision that you're making in your business or your life right now that could help you create and jump into that new chapter or life or result. And if you caught my live yesterday, I talked about the two identities that are constantly in our lives. And so basically, one is always coming from fear, what we've already known, and one is coming from the version of you that's calling you forward. So, one of the things that you want to think about is if I was that version already, whatever your goal is, whatever your desire is, happy birthday. Um, you know, how would you be responding right now? What would your days be like? How would you be moving throughout your days? Like what are the things that you're investing your time and your energy with? And if you catch my live from yesterday, I go into the three like actions or parts of our life that we kind of have to clear for identity rebirth, and to move into new chapters or creating more revenue, etc. So this week is making that decision very real. It's making that like, okay, we're going to concrete this. I'm going to step into this. Maybe we don't know exactly how that's going to happen, but we know maybe there needs to be a certain shift or step to just start. And one of the things I always like to teach through my own experience, which is, ultimately a few months ago, I got the download, but like I normally do. And it was like, you're done business coaching. And it's like, okay, well, I sold all these business coaching containers for the year already. And I was like, oh, I'm done business coaching at the end of this year. And it was very clear, no, right? It like something completely different came through. And that's that moment where we can have the best plan. We can like be going down the track, right? And then all of a sudden, something just occurs to you. And that's what I always say about life is that like we can have the best plan, but be open, especially if you do any form of work that really represents, your highest timeline. And that's a big mantra that I constantly use is just like, I only align with my highest timeline. I only align with my highest timeline to success or wealth or love or money or whatever you want to do. And what that does is it helps me move in real time, not kind of like staying on the same track, but allowing myself to continue and be open. And a lot of those different pivots that I would like to say, they're very frequency based. They're things like you don't know until you're in the energy, right? You don't know you're until you're in it. And you're like, oh, wait, but like, what about this thing, right? So, and that's how we actually respond to our environments. That's how we respond. That's how innovation comes forward, And so I would say across the board, because we have a lot of conjunctions with Uranus this week, a lot of that is going to shift for a lot of people this week. So I'm also hearing very clearly you might start seeing yourself differently this week. Like you literally will just look in the mirror and see somebody different staring at you, not in a bad way, but it's like, oh, wow, like you can see your new identity coming in real time, right? And so facial structures might change. The way that you're holding your energy might change. The way that you walk into a room might change. The way that you convey yourself or the way that you speak might change. It just is, it's shifting, right? And so be open to that shift and be open to how that's moving. So in the beginning of the week, we had a few conjunctions. Mercury, the planet of communication, was conjunct Mars and Saturn, right? This is carrying that energy from last week. And so, with that much fire, it's about Saturn brings discipline in Aries. And it's like, okay, like Mars and Aries, just like, I just want to go. I want to burn it down. I want to do the thing. But Saturn in Aries is like, cool, great idea. What's the plan? You know what I mean? So, that's basically having this, like, okay, like really think about what you want, really think about, like, okay, instead of just like jumping, like really allow for that breakthrough to happen, really allow for that pivot to happen, not because, like it's like kind of pumping the brakes because you're about to turn. You know what I mean? If you try to, if, I don't know if anyone's got their motorcycle license here, but I do. And it's like, if you don't like slow down at all, you're just going to fly off the bike, right? So ultimately, that's what Saturn is doing. It's like you are here to have a turn, and it's really important that you turn because over there, that's going to be even better. But in order for us to turn properly and not fly off the bike, you got to pump the brakes a little bit, right? You want to slow down and lean into that turn enough that you can hold that throttle, so that's basically the energy of this week. And it's like, okay, we're going to make this shift, but we're going to do it in a way that doesn't have us flying off, the handles or whatever it is. It's doing it in a way that's like, all right, everything's going to go this way now. So as we come into this, week, we have the moon moving from Gemini to Cancer today to Leo to Virgo. Gemini rules communication. Cancer is your internal dreams and intuition. Leo is going to be about how you take the stage of your life. And then Virgo is the commitment to the process and seeing it through. So when we think about that, all these larger shifts are happening and it's kind of guiding you through that process. We also have a conjunction between Venus and Uranus. I believe it's Thursday, if I'm correct. Um, yes, it's Thursday, the same day that Venus actually moves into Gemini. So we are actually in the last few days of Venus moving into Venus being in Taurus, which is her home ruling sign. And when she moves into Gemini, Venus in Gemini is like, all right, I just need to communicate. I need to like get out there. I need to share my ideas. I need to like, it's like it's kind of like quick moving, right? And it's like it's more about connection, like opening doors through connection or visibility or your voice. And it's like really allowing for yourself to share that perspective. Or like, one thing you know, is like talking to people, right? Venus and Gemini is like, I need to communicate my ideas. I want to pitch this. I want to throw this email out there. Just throw it out there. The worst thing that's going to happen is people say no, right? So ultimately, that's kind of the shift that's happening. And so Venus will come into Gemini for the month of that we are actually Sun in Taurus. And so what that's going to do is that the way that we create more wealth and more visibility is through that connection, is through those divine asks, right? And I feel like a lot of the big things that have been pouring through for me is like, well, you're not asking. You have to ask, not just from the universe, but ask for help from others or ask, like, hey, would you be interested in collaborating or blah, 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 like something along those lines. So we also have a massive transit that is going to be happening at the edge of this week, which is on the 25th, which is Uranus stations permanently into Gemini. We got a little taste last year, and ultimately you might have felt it a little bit last year, but when, a transit, that's typically a longer form transit. 7 years, 14 years, 20 years. When they do this cha-cha around the edge of the signs, that's when we feel it the most. So when Uranus comes into Gemini on the 25th, another live that I did on Sunday, I talked a lot about, how wealth is going to be created through your voice, through your energetics, through your ability to share perspectives. I'm also hearing very community based. People are going to crave more community based things. So that's a big piece as well in our business right now is that we're transitioning a lot of our whole company to community-based platform. I already have a membership, but it's like way more community-based than it was even before. So in these coming times, to really see how it's going to impact you is you want to look at to where, Gemini rules in your chart. And you want to look at the house that it rules in your chart. And that particular area is probably going to have a lot of transformation, accelerated transformation on in that because Uranus will be in there. So if you also do a little bit of review before this happens, you might want to look into the house right before, which is going to be the house that is ruled by Taurus. And that's the one that got the glow up over the last 7 years. And you can think about, okay, what are the big transformations that happened? And so these conjunctions with Uranus is not quiet. It is the breakthrough planet, but sometimes breakthroughs don't really necessarily look like rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes they look like things falling apart. And so my biggest invitation is if you are getting the guidance to move or to communicate or to make a choice or decision, you probably want to lean into that because it probably will open up a lot of doors versus how you were moving before, which comes back to the entire identity work that we were doing with that stellium in Aries. Right. So, one of the biggest things that really has helped me quantum leap, collapse time on my goals, come into like what I feel is my unique wealth vortex is I jumped and I responded the way that I was like the person of who I was when I achieved that result already, right? So right now, the way that I'm responding to my environment is the version of myself that has a multi-million dollar company. So the way that I'm investing or the things that I like scale my company years in advance, right? And so that's my invitation for you is I want you to think, especially this week, if I was responding like that person who already had these results, what would I be focusing on? How would I be moving? What are the choices that I need to make? And one thing, like if you've created success in a certain way, but you're getting the guidance to start a new project, you need to create space for that. And nobody talks about that jump, which is what I call an initiation process, which is something that is called the 7 dimensions of faith, which is part of the work that I teach inside SONA. So the 7 dimensions of faith are going to help you come back to trusting yourself over anything external, right? So you have your unique channel, you have your unique guidance, you have your mastery, right? The 7 dimensions of faith actually come back to the seven planets. Absolutely, I can give some examples. The 7 planets, the 7 core planets in your chart. And so based on where those planets are in your chart, you are mastering those placements, right? So if your Saturn is in Libra, you're here to master discipline around relationships. And the light of that is like understanding, the balance of reciprocity, understanding all of those things. But the shadow of it is the imbalance, right? Trying to control in relationships or trying to manipulate in relationships or whatever it is because we don't feel worthy. So that's just an example. But all of those placements, the 7 core planets in your 7 core placements, the 7 core alchemical planets before we knew about the outer three, those are like part of your chakras as well, right? And so when you are being asked to come into a dimension of faith, right? You'll probably be asked very similar is like, how can I respond from that higher state of awareness, right? How can I respond from my Jupiter is retrograde in Aries? So that's not waiting for other people to tell me when to go. That's me coming into, okay, I actually create wealth by listening from like doing release work and going inside. And then that's literally how I've created wealth, right? So, and I get my ideas from the inside. So I've mastered that placement. So the different things depending on your particular chart, you want to think about what that process is. And, good question. What would you be focusing on when you're at that? And so, what I would say is very similar to what I said at the beginning of this live is that you need to focus on how does that version of myself respond? Right? How does that version of myself move? And so, anytime I've been moving into a new identity or wanting to create something new or something like that, I can't be responding or telling the same stories or waking up the same way that the version of myself who created a 300K year versus the version of myself that's having a 5 million a year business. Those are two different versions, right? The version of that, the 5 million version, she's responding and looking over a team. The 300K person is thinking about what's my next offer, right? So that's how you want to start responding and thinking this week is like, how do we close that gap? And if you go back to my two previous lives, I give you a lot of instructions on how to do that this week. So, what I would recommend is that when we're moving through that phase, right, the middle phase is the most important because it's how we move from one identity to the next. So, the biggest thing is your daily habits. It's going to be the way that you wake up in the morning, it's going to be the stories that you're telling, it's the precision of your energy. And so, that breakthrough, when we're moving through our week this week, this is going to be the actual initiations or choices that you might get an insight to make that it doesn't make sense in this moment, but you're going to make that investment or whatever it is that you just feel like you need to do something. That is the door, right? A lot of times too, we have like a great idea about something and then we're like, no, 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 I can't do that, blah, 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 or we get busy or whatever it is. And that's the universe trying to open the fucking door for you, but you have to take the action, right? So that's what this week is about. And it's about being able to listen to those things, right? But we can't listen. And if we're like constantly doing, we have to quiet the mind and go within. So, in addition to this week as well, we have a square building in the sky between Sun and Pluto, and Pluto is in Aquarius, and the Sun is there as well. And so, this also brings up, how can you slow the way that you're propelling yourself, or like the way that, like, how can you look at what you are telling yourself you are worthy of, which is confirmed from our current environment, to where my vision is ready to take me, right? Nobody ever was like, like I just sat down one day on my living room floor and I was like, I'm powerful enough to create this, right? And I just kept doing ritual. And then that led me to like, these little things and then learning more and then learning more and then learning more. And then now I have a 7-figure brand, right? That didn't happen overnight, but it's because I decided to, even if I'm in this current environment or this current reality right now, I get to choose to tell a different story. And that vision gets to choose to come through me. That vision is coming through, but I have to take action and bring it into form, right? I have to be the 3D conduit of what that is. And so if you have a vision or thing or an inkling of something that's coming forward, where can you remap like your current things that you do have control over? The only thing that we have control over is our actions every single day, right? Our thought process, and then ultimately our beliefs and the stories that we're telling, right? So that is where I always start. And I always look at like, okay, where's the resistance, right? What are the actions that I need to do? What am I telling myself I don't have time for that would actually really open the door for me? What is the level of discipline, Saturn, coming forward around how I'm using or cultivating my energy, right? How can I allow for myself to kind of do an audit of everything and look at everything and say, okay, is this thing just spinning my wheels? Is this thing like actually investing to where I want to go? And that's when you start to kind of flow into that next identity. So, yep, totally. And those practices to connect with our future identity and SONA as well, correct? Absolutely. So, the question about SONA is that, when those, and I guess is a really good topic because this is also how I get my programs, right? So I don't look at to what everybody else is doing. I am very focused on my connection to the universe and how it wants to move through me. If we are constantly focused on what everybody else is doing, we're going to be constantly in competition. That's all it is, right? But if I come in and I look and I hear, that's actually how the framework of SONA dropped in. And it came through my life's work, my ability of being able to move myself through the 7 dimensions of faith over the last 4 years and continue to quantum leap, right? So when we think about that, I could have said that download came through with Sona. Now I implemented it into the podcast, which now has like 500 downloads in less than 24 hours, so that's like a whole thing, right? I was shown that. I took action. I built the podcast. We've already monetized the podcast within hours. So that's how I know it works. And that's how your unique genius works as well. And so when we come into that, I could have, in my old identity about 2 months ago, I could have said, nope, I'm just going to keep with the plan that I had with my business, right? I had a whole plan for the rest of the year that I was going to launch. That all went to trash. So that's how. And now it's like, all right, this whole new trajectory is coming. But it doesn't mean that that was like, you have to have faith, right? Because you're bridging something that nobody's ever done before, right? And that makes it so unique unto you and why your clients are waiting on the other side of that. Because your clients are connected to that creation in that timeline and that vision came through you. That's your identity of allowing for yourself to move through that process. So, if I just launched my website business, would it be a good idea to focus first one channel and go straight to three to create the signal and how to start sharing my spoken voice? I would definitely just start. And what I think is, when I teach about Sona is like you want three channels, so three topics that you rotate, basically. So if you want to start with one channel, you absolutely can, but then when you're ready, add a couple more, right? By the time, Vital Mystic is pretty established. So it's like I already know what my channels are. I would say if you know what your one channel is, use your one channel and then follow that 5-part pentagon sequence that is going to help you create that one channel and then start to add a couple more. But if there's a 3-part rotation that you want to think about, I would have that on the docket. Yeah. But if you're like just implementing, then do it that way. So, if anyone is interested, the doors are still open for Sona. We will close them at the end of the week, and our founders pricing is going away. So if you are ready to learn those resonance marketing tools, you want to learn how to expand your frequency, call in your clients, and understand how to work with your astrology chart as you also build your business and create that structure, following also your timeline, not teaching you my timeline, I'm teaching your timeline and what you're here to do. We do have the doors open and you can comment Sona on any of our posts or stories to see what that's about. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And just remember, this is the identity shift. This is the integral work. You're going to start to see some clues, and your job is to just continue to show up and take the steps and open the doors, and and everything will be there for you. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful week.